Hey guys, just eat it here. And I just made a video a day or two ago about how I make my homemade fire starters. And if you haven't seen that, after this video you might want to check it out. I'll link it to one of my end cards so you can see how I made this one. But what I want to do today is I want to compare 3 different types of fire starters. First one is Firelight that I got at Ace Hardware. Second one is one of my favorites, Wetfire, and I think you probably couldn't go wrong with one of these. And then my homemade fire starter, cotton bands and petroleum jelly. So I think what we're going to find here is Wetfire and my homemade fire starter light pretty easy, and this one here probably doesn't light as easy as the other two. Yeah, I've got these, and I'm sitting in a wind controlled environment, but keep that in mind when you watch me touch these off. And then what I'm going to do is, once I light them, I'm going to set a timer to see how long they all burn. And you know, this will give you an idea of what kind of fire starting you might want to keep in your fire kit. So I'm going to start number 1 first, because I think it's going to be the hardest to ignite. It ignited pretty easy, but the wind was blowing, it could have gone out. Number 2, the Wetfire. Number 3, my homemade fire starter, which I think the Wetfire, I actually think my homemade one started a little easier. Oh, let's start the timer. So we got a timer going, and we're going to see how long each of these 3 will burn. Now, try to move this one because it's close to the Wetfire, and the Wetfire is putting off a pretty good flame. However, I think of the 3, you're going to pay more for the Wetfire, and you're going to pay a little less for the Firelighter, and you're going to pay practically little or nothing for the homemade version that I came up with. But I think any 3 of these would start a good fire. So we're going to see how long they burn, and that may be the second thing you want to consider when you're trying to fire up some kindling. If you can't find any small pieces, the bigger your pieces you're starting your fire with, the longer flame time you're going to need on your fire starters. Like I said in my previous video, I am not a flint and steel or ferro rod kind of a guy. When I go out and start a fire, I want to start a fire. So I'm probably going to have matches or some sort of lighter to get me started, because I just don't want to waste time trying to get my fire going. But I know you bushcraft people, you want to see people lighting up a fire the old-fashioned way. Even if I get caught in the apocalypse, I'm going to have several ways to start a fire without a ferro rod. But I am going to get one just to experiment with it. But anyway, so here we are at 2 minutes in. All 3 are still burning. Now the thing about Wetfire, you could actually set that in a cup of water and it would burn. So keep that in mind. If you want to have something in your fire kit that will start a fire in extreme conditions, you probably ought to have some Wetfire. I hate using mine because they're a little bit expensive. So if there's some other way to get a fire started like my homemade fire starters, that's what I'm going to go to first. And if I'm out in the rain or having a difficult situation, I want to have some of these Wetfires, because in my opinion they're pretty much a sure thing. What I'm finding interesting here is these fire lighter cubes, I'm thinking, are going to burn the longest, but I also think they're the hardest to start, so you got to factor that in. 3.5 minutes in, and all 3 fire starters are still burning. I'm pretty impressed with my little homemade fire starter, considering how little it cost me to make that, and how well it's working. It probably is not going to hold up as long as the Wetfire and the fire lighter, but it certainly held up long enough to start a fire. And in my previous video, where I show how I made this, the one I burned in that video lasted about a little better than 4 minutes, and this one is a little better than 4 minutes, so I can pretty much anticipate 4 minutes of flame when I use my homemade fire starter. 5 minutes in, my Wetfire is still burning, and my fire lighter is still burning. My homemade one fizzled out at 4.5 minutes. Still, cost-wise, I think it's going to be cheaper for me to use these to start my fires, because they're just so easy and inexpensive to make. I don't have to drive anywhere to pick them up or look for them. But just to recap, I do want to have some Wetfire in my kit. These fire lighters, when I've used them up, I'm not going to replace those, even though okay, just under 6 minutes and the Wetfire has gone out. However, the fire lighter, my least favorite, is still burning strong. I don't know what to say about that. I'm going to run this video and come back when it's over. It says here, odorless, tasteless, contains no toxic substance, no other kindling needed. The bag says it lasts 12 minutes, so now we've got to see if this is going to last 12 minutes. We're at 6.5 minutes now. So I guess when Firelight says no other kindling needed, I would sort of agree with that, but I think it would take a couple of these placed at different places under your big logs, because if you get a 12-minute burn, you're probably going to be able to start off a bigger piece of wood, bigger than a piece of kindling. But, you know, if you're making a fire, it's fun to get the twigs going first, the leaves, pine needles, whatever, and then build it up to bigger and bigger. But if you don't have that available, like if you're at a place where they say you can't collect firewood of any kind, then having some of these in your fire starting kit might be a good deal. I'm going to replace the homemade igniter that I used to make this video into my kit. You know, there's nothing like a campfire for any number of reasons. Mostly they're relaxing. In some situations they put off heat. So you really just don't want to mess around too much trying to make the fire. And I've watched a lot of people on YouTube that make fires, and so it got me to thinking about my fire kit. And I gotta say, at about 9.5 minutes, the fire lighter, safe, fast, easy. Oh, okay. Maybe we will get 12 minutes, but I had to tilt it because it had gone out. Let's be fair. I really think the 12-minute time is an exaggeration on this one. Had I been putting the marketing on the bag, I would have probably said 10 minutes, just to be, because people don't like it when they do a test on something and you don't meet expectations. So don't set your expectations too high. My fire starter, homemade, about 4.5 minutes. Wetfire, about 6 minutes. And fire lighter, 10 minutes to be realistic. It's still smoldering. You probably could still start a fire with that, but why bother? You know, when I see a lot of these guys blowing on smoke into a fire, I'm thinking, man, I don't want to inhale that stuff. So, anyway, this is just Edith saying, this is my comparison video of different types of fire starters. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, like, ring the bell, come back for more videos, and God bless y'all and have a great day.